G'day, everybody. Alibi Jones here, leader and founder of the Earth Guard Astral Projection Group. Uh, I just saw some social media that ah, really verifies that I'm not nuts. I wondered for a while if I'm nuts because at the moment I seem to be the only YouTuber or the only person out there who's fighting this spiritual war. And maybe that's a whole poor me statement and all of that, but who else is doing it? Who else is actually getting their hands dirty and getting involved in this spiritual war? And the answer is Teal Swan, of all people, like the living master, Teal Swan. And so, I'm going to talk about the things that we're both talking about. Now, for several years, well, at least the life of this YouTube channel, I've been talking about the covert war, the war of infiltration and not confrontation. And they've been using methods that, they've kept themselves fairly well hidden. Like nobody seems to be able to tell you what demons do or how they've taken over our political, financial, and media castes. And when they dominate those strategic industries, guess what? They dominate the whole of human culture. Isn't that awesome? And so their presence, they've managed to mask in this way. But, I'm just going to let Teal's three videos talk for themselves now.
People are talking about there being a risk of a third world war, but the reality is very different than what people currently understand. The reality is that the world is already at war, and the vast majority of people don't even know it. This raises the question, how could it be that a person doesn't know they're in a world war? If I ask you to give me some images of what war looks like, you would immediately think of cannons being shot, people hacking through each other with swords, bombs being dropped, people being run through with bayonets, people being abducted and separated from each other, buildings being blown up by airstrikes and grenades, people being shot at point blank, or people being tortured in concentration camps. Well, what does all of this have in common? You would be thinking of physical violence. What you have not accounted for is the fact that you and everyone else living today have come from centuries and centuries of war looking one way. And that way is physical violence. But that does not mean that physical violence is the way that war must look or always has and always will look. There are far better tactics and weapons in this day and age than marching at each other in a phalanx formation with swords in our hands, or dropping atom bombs, or invading an area with tanks. In fact, these physically violent strategies and weapons are just one of the tools that you have in your tool basket. People across the world are waiting on the edge of their seats for a formal declaration of war, or for physically violent conflict to escalate to the point where someone in a position of authority, maybe it's a president or a politician or a military professional or the press, to put that label on it, World War III, to let them know that it is happening. People do not understand the nature of a silent war. Nor do many people understand that formal declarations like this do not necessarily mark the beginning of a war, even when they are made. The true nature of the beginning of a specific war is often something that becomes obvious only when looking back on the whole thing to find defining events, and how those events created chain reactions. Basically, the picture often comes into view only in retrospect. The war of today's world is one that looks on the surface like a disorienting, confusing mess of every tool there is for any party involved in this war to gain power. But what it really is a very sophisticated use of a myriad of psychological, emotional, physical, and social weapons and tactics that are being used by all the many parties that are in fact involved in this war. Navigating the world in a time like this, knowing what to do and what not to do, is really, really hard. People who have been through wars past have definitely faced certain elements of this war before, but not others. And so we really haven't faced a situation like this before, which means there's no real rule book for it. I don't say this to make you feel totally powerless or to scare you, even though, yes, that's probably what knowing this makes you feel. I say this so you will take pressure off yourself to know perfectly what to do in the landscape of today's world, and to stop feeling like something is wrong with you for not knowing what to do.
So when you watch her videos, it's clear that an incredibly sophisticated psychological media information war has been waged upon us. And, let there be no doubt that that's what's going on. Ugh. But, I just want humanity to fight it. We're walking around like lemmings. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what to do. Nobody seems to have the question right. Like, how do I respond in these times? Well, what's going on in these times? That's the right question. And the answer is that humanity is about to be snuffed out. Human cultures, if we don't fight the war, then we obviously lose it. And if you watch this video, you'll start to see the anatomy of the war. But the thing that motivates me the most is the idea that humanity goes digital. It's the worst thing that could possibly happen because that galactic AI is here to dominate the planet. And there's no other outcome for a digital world other than the AI as a hive queen and all of us humans as a drone. Even the ones who get computers chips in their heads. It just means you'll never be able to think for yourself again. You'll never be able to think an unsanctioned thought because the computer in there will fight you tooth and nail. It's where humanity gets defanged and dominated. And then, just like they do with every other planet we've seen, drained to extinction. So, I know that Teal's limited in how hard she can press the panic button. I'm not. I'm not at all. But stay tuned to this channel. We have some more initiatives coming as our group grows, our capacity grows. So by all means, get into what we're talking about and investigate this a little bit more because there's a lot more under the surface. And I think that our narrative is the only one that's completely coherent. The rest of them all have gaping holes. Our one does not. Anyway, my love to you all. Our hope for humanity. Bye for now.